Assalamualaikum and good day to you, Dr. Rusli. I hope you're in a ping of health. Beforehand, my friend Nur Hazira will explain about the introduction.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to Dr. Rusli. I'm Nur Hazira binti Tami. So, I will start with introduction. Inflation can be demarcated as constant rise in the aggregate or general price level in economy, which means that there is an upsurge in the cost of living. A research found that inflation is when the price of the most goods and services continue rising upwards. This situation may cause the standard of living fall because people have to spend more to get the same amount of goods and services that they bought previous time. It is also known as the percentage change in the value of the consumer price index on the year-on-year basis. It can be said that inflation is an incessant issue in all nations, mostly in developing nations, in maintaining low living costs, high growth, health economy as aimed to policymakers' decisions. Inflation provides positive and negative impact depending on a country's economic condition. However, inflation has its worst impact towards consumers. High prices from day-to-day goods make it difficult for consumers to afford even for the basic commodities in daily life, which will disrupt the smooth functioning of a market economy. It was worrying the people, especially those in P40 categories. Up till the 15 Malaysia election in 2020, most Malaysians was hoping for lower cost of living, where the issue was still manufactured by some election candidates. Although there are certain products that could be subsidized, but products such as food and beverage, utilities and properties are directly influenced by inflation. Despite of blaming certain parties for increased cost of living, Malaysia sought to understand what direct the high cost of living which lead to turmoil and become the major issue in Malaysia. Consumer price index becomes an important tool due to Malaysians are more concerned on their cost of living. People demand for higher income and try to reduce costs in order to expand their purchasing power. Unfortunately, higher income will lead to higher inflation. The government tries to keep inflation under control and moving forward to achieve low or zero inflation. The Consumer Price Index is a measure that examines the weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services, such as transportation, food, beverage, and medical care. It is calculated by taking price changes for each item in the predetermined basket of goods and averaging them. Changes in the CPI are used to assess price changes associated with the cost of living. The CPI is one of the most frequently used statistics for identifying periods of inflation or deflation. The CPI measures the average change in prices over time that consumers pay for a basket of goods and services, commonly known as inflation. Essentially, it attempts index to quantify the aggregate price level in an economy and thus measure the purchasing power of a country's unit of currency. The weighted average of the prices of goods and services that approximates an individual's consumption patterns is used to calculate CPI. A trim mean may be used as part of this. Consumer Price Index is an economic indicator that most extensively used as a measure for inflation and by proxy of the effectiveness of government's economic policy. The CPI gives the government, business and citizens an idea about price changes in the economy and can act as a guide as to make informed decisions about the economy. Likewise, the CPI and the components that make it up can also be used as a deflator for other economic indicators, including retail sales, hourly or weekly earnings. CPI also can be used to value a consumer's currency to find its purchasing power. Basically, the currency's purchasing power declines when the aggregate price level increases and vice versa. The index can be also be used to alter pupils' eligibility levels for certain types of government assistance including Social Security, and it automatically provides the cost of living wage adjustment to domestic workers. On the long run, the broad money export of goods and services, gross domestic product and household final consumption expenditure are significantly positively related to the Consumer Price Index. The results show a sign of complete pass-through of household final consumption expenditure to the Consumer Price Index.
Greetings to Dr. Rusli. My name is Elviani Solukin. Now I will discuss the issue of Malaysians' economic indicators and selected economic theory, that is classical school, related to Thomas Robert Malthus theory. Malaysians' economic indicators. Malaysians Consumer Price Index (CPI) were fluctuated on years to years from the period of 2010 to 2015. According to World Bank data, Malaysians Consumer Price Index 2010 equals 100. 2010 was 100. 2011 rose by 103.174. 2012 declined by 104.891. 2013 increased again by 107.099. 2014 more upsurges by 110.465 and 2015 dropped by 114.79. Next, about the economics of the Thomas Robert Malthus. His theory was connected to the issue of inflation rate and the economic indicators, which is Consumer Price Index (CPI). He addressed such topics as population growth, the methodology of GDP accounting, value theory, diminishing return, land rent, and aggregate demand. Malthus expressed that food important for survival, uncontrollable human appetite, and much faster population growth than foodstuff. Malthus has several suggestions to improve economic development, among others, namely, to increase economic factors where growth is balanced, the economy is divided into two, namely the agricultural and industry sector.
So for now, I will explain about the discussion and conclusion. Inflation rate in Malaysia was fluctuated from 2010 to 2015. It's occurred due to the unstable price of commodities, goods and services, in Malaysia's economy.
Inflation rate in Malaysia was overcome well in a right way during the financial crisis that faced by the country compared to other countries that faced high inflation during the same period. Inflation in Malaysia was disquieting when there is a significant increase from year 2010 to 2014, respectively. Was caused by the financial crisis that has always happened in the world monetary system. Therefore, the government has implemented a stimulus package involving an allocation of 67 billion ringgit Malaysia as to stimulate the economy severely affected by the global slowdown. Had previously projected GDP to grow by more than 6.0% in 2010. Thus, the continued influx of foreign direct investment, the strong reserve position in the central bank, the ringgit's record performance, as well as high commodity prices boosted growth and helped 2010 recovery. On April 1, 2015, GST has been implemented in Malaysia at a rate of 6% by the sixth Prime Minister of Malaysia, Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak. GST has recorded a decline in real gross domestic product (RGDP) in the end of year 2015 by 1.17%. Findings show that growth has negatively related to marginal tax rate (MTR), which is higher MTR would reduce growth. In long run, there is positive relationship between GST and GDP.
As for conclusion,
The consumer price significantly positively related to broad money exports of goods and services, GDP, and household use of goods and services. The implementations made by the government and policymakers to some extent has helped to overcome the inflation crisis. Consumer Price Index (CPI) gave the government, businesses, and citizens an idea about prices changes in the economy and act as a guide as to make informed decisions about the economy. Besides, the Thomas Robert Malthus economics theory are quite related to the economic issue discussed. His theory gave lessons to the current economic situation.
therefore, in conclusion, Consumer Price Index is an important measure for inflation. With it, government could implement the best alternatives to overcome the inflation or deflation crisis that faced by the country.